When you look at an Art Nouveau painting like this one from Alphonse Mucha, there is so much going on. It can be overwhelming and we don't know where to start with analyzing it. I'm Frances from Atelier Lambda, and today we will walk through together how to make an Art Nouveau-like poster. We'll start with the basic info about the art style and movement, and then work our way up to 2 exercises, so that at the end of this video you are able to create your own Art Nouveau poster. If you stick around until the end, I'll also be sharing my favorite resources on where I find my inspiration, reference pictures, and how I discover new artists I enjoy. First off, let's brush up on our collective art history and talk about what Art Nouveau is real quick. Art Nouveau was popular in the late 19th and early 20th century, and it is characterized by its organic, flowing lines and inspiration from nature. As with so many other movements, it can be considered a counter-movement against what was present at that time, and that was heavy industrialism as well as the automation of previously manual crafts. Mass production was equalizing the daily life of people, and the Art Nouveau movement wanted to reintroduce beauty into the daily life. Art Nouveau is part of the overarching Belle Epoque. That is a time period marked by peace before World War I, and there was an upper class who enjoyed a wealthy and elegant lifestyle. They had disposable income and enjoyed quite a few leisure activities. Unlike previous art movements, Art Nouveau also found equal value in the fine arts as well as the applied arts such as metalwork, ceramics, or glassware. That's why Art Nouveau is represented in such a variety and celebrates most times daily life, mundane tasks, and gives overly beautiful and lavish advertisements for something as simple as a beverage. That is a very short and incomplete outline of Art Nouveau, but 2 things we keep in mind are Art Nouveau is supposed to be beautiful, and the motifs are often mundane and always inspired by nature. There is more to it, of course, and next up we'll talk about what makes something Art Nouveau, what gives the impression of a piece originating from that time. The defining features of this art style are also what makes it most difficult to emulate. Let me explain. Originally, there were seldom any right angles and symmetry was to be avoided. But as with any other art style that evolves over decades, the thing we mostly know it for are advertisements and posters like the ones from Alphonse Mucha. And there is, in fact, a lot of geometry, a lot of shapes and symmetry. At the same time, though, it shouldn't be visibly geometric. Art Nouveau wants to give the illusion of free-flowing lines while also using the human condition to find symmetry pleasing. And that is a contradiction we have to master. Another thing, Art Nouveau paintings are most times bold and flat, but at the same time they still have depth. They don't really vary in perspective or point of view, only in the cropping of the motif. How can we achieve that? One of the main features we can immediately recognize and need to master is the overlapping of lines. It gives the illusion of depth and makes the overall artwork enticing to look at. You don't know where it ends, you don't know where it starts, and that's what's drawing you into Art Nouveau pieces. Keep those 2 things in mind, especially if you want to paint like Mucha. We need geometry, but want to make it look like it's free-flowing. And we also need to create an illusion of depth while keeping the actual painting flat. That was a lot of information. Let's get practical with our first Art Nouveau exercise. For this, you will need simple quadrilled paper, a pencil, and some equipment to create geometric drawings such as a ruler and maybe a compass, and an eraser. We will erase a lot. Later for the line art, you will need a fine liner in maybe 3 different sizes, or if you have it, one with a brush tip. In this exercise, we will choose 3 different shapes and try to fill them with a very simple motif. But before we can choose a motif, there is one question we have to ask ourselves. Shout out to Berolina for asking this question in one of my latest YouTube community posts. What kind of flora and fauna natural motifs are we supposed to choose? Because the epicenter of Art Nouveau was in Europe and the British arts and crafts movement, you will mostly see European flora and fauna. For plants, very common ones are iris, roses, poppy, and lily. And for animals, think of elegant animals such as birds. The swan was very popular and the peacock, but also things like dragonflies. And you will notice some Japanese motifs such as cranes. That's because back then Japan had just opened its borders and a stream of these exotic wares was coming to Europe, and the Europeans loved it. There was a real Japan mania. Other common natural themes are the seasons, the moon cycle, some mythical creatures such as mermaids or nymphs. There is, however, nothing stopping you from choosing any other plant or animal. Ernst Haeckel proved that even deep-sea creatures can be made beautiful in Art Nouveau, and Anton Seder went as far as painting dragons in this style. And it works. We'll talk about the second huge motif that people were obsessed with later on. Spoiler alert, it's women. Now that we know what to paint, let's start the exercise. First, we begin by choosing shapes. I'll choose a circle, a rectangle, and a triangle. Then we choose our nature-inspired motifs. I'll go with a lily, a kraken, and a dragonfly. We sketch out our chosen object, and the ultimate goal is to fill the full shape with not just the object, but also object-related things from nature. The lily will, of course, not only have its flower bud, but also the stem and the leaves and maybe some unopened buds. The lily in all of its stages in nature. Maybe some different angles as well. And on the left side, you will see this very naturalistic approach. And on the right side, you will see a more stylized ornamental approach that was also very popular at that time. For the ornamental approach, you'll mostly go with one depiction of your object and try to keep it somewhat symmetrical. The main point is add a lot of details. And with the natural look on the left side, we have the option to use the border to create one more layer of depth. Remember, we want as many layers as possible and as many overlapping lines as we can manage. Maybe a leaf is hanging over the border, or a lily is growing outside of the frame, and the kraken can have one tentacle over the border and appear as if it is crawling out of its space. Those are fun things to play with and really enhance your drawing. The ornamental ones are mostly a flat or top-down view you can concentrate on. Part 1, choose the shape. Part 2, choose the object. Part 3, add details. Step 4 is to erase and use the fine liner. We keep in mind that we want to create as many layers as possible, and we look at, for example, the leaves, which leaf is on top of the others, and erase the lines that don't fit. No one can go in there with a perfect finished painting in mind and know exactly which line will overlap which. That's where the eraser and the fine liner comes in. For the first line art, I only use a size 0.2, and then we really want to work on bringing in some variety with a different thickness of lines. I have a 0.2, a 0.4, as well as a 0.8. And the way you go about this is you use the thickest outline for the objects that are at the very front. The details of the object at the front will be with a finer line as well, and just try to experiment, play with it, and find what works for you. Bonus tip, if you want to use a sketch multiple times or don't want to erase as much, you can use transparent paper to paint on top of it, or if you have it, you can use a light box. Easy peasy! You can recreate this with so many different things. Also, a fun exercise is to choose one object or motif and then go for an array of 5 or 6 different shapes and try to fit it in there somehow. It'll train your eye for the natural movement of animals, birds, or plants, how they can grow around almost anything. Before we go on to the second, bigger exercise, I want to talk about another question from a subscriber. Thank you to Annika. The question is, what mediums and materials can I recommend for Art Nouveau paintings? There are 2 I can highly recommend. The first one is a mixed approach with watercolors as well as colored pencils, or if you have them, water-soluble pencils. I personally am not good enough with watercolors to paint all of it with this medium. Therefore, go in with watercolors for a base layer. Oftentimes you will notice that the background is a gradient, and it can be fun to go from area to area, line art to line art, fill in those gradients and create a cohesive background. Then you can use colored or water-soluble pencils on top. There is one artist I know of, incredible watercolor Art Nouveau paintings. I will link that down below. And I forgot to tell you, I will link all of the things I'm talking about down below. If I forget something, just write a quick comment and I'll send you the resource. I want to provide all of this in the description for you. The other thing I recommend is actually a multitude of mediums as long as they dry flat and non-shiny to give it that bold poster look. That could be a special non-shiny acrylic set such as the SoFlat from Golden. It could be gouache, acrylic gouache. And there were in fact many pieces that only had an array of 3 to 4 colors. If you recreate those, it'll really help you to concentrate on the line art and then only use the color to give it a more cohesive look. A little bonus and very different art medium I recently used is lino cut or reductive prints in general. Back then they mostly used woodcuts, and recently I recreated one of my favorite albums, Dance Fever, in this Art Nouveau style. I love how it turned out, and if you print with permanent ink, you can even use this as your base line art for a mixed media approach. But it's very time and material intensive. Let's move on to the second exercise with a little Art Nouveau composition tutorial. How can we create a large piece like Mucha? Where do we start? And what kind of shapes and composition should we use? For bigger pieces, I recommend we go with the hands down most popular motif for posters, women. In Art Nouveau, you can never go wrong with a woman. The mostly male artists loved painting women in a sensual, liberated, yet unapproachable way. They are idealized. Back then, women were slowly becoming more independent, and some of them even had some kind of income they were able to spend. And just like today, the female body and some ideals were used to generate sales not only from men but women alike. In advertisement, they are having fun using the product, they are enjoying themselves, and their main purpose is to look beautiful. In art pieces, they are doing mundane tasks. It's really not that much of a difference. They could be eating a cherry, holding a flower, raking their garden, staring off into the distance. They don't do much. They are not overweight, but round and plump. They are very immersed in their very mundane task. Disclaimer, that's of course only one area of this vast decade-long art movement we are concentrating on. We are focusing on how to paint in an Art Nouveau poster style, such as Mucha. Now, I painted my sketch digitally, which if you have access to it, I highly recommend it. I can now walk you through the time lapse, pause it and play it as I go. It's much quicker and easier to do this digitally. My motif is a woman who is pouring herself a cup of coffee from her French press. I thought about her staring at her cat while she is pouring, but honestly, that's already too much going on. Keep the motif simple, go all out on the details and the core. I already have my initial sketch, and first off, we were putting her a bit off-center so that this whole piece is asymmetrical. And the first thing I do in compositioning this piece is to create an elegant frame. I'm simply blocking in some shapes so that I know where the frame will be. I also want there to be a round shape behind her head. Maybe because it's her morning coffee, it can be reminding us of the sun in terms of the decor. A fun thing you can do to create one more layer of depth is to let your motif stick out of the frame a bit. On purpose, I am elongating her form. I didn't put the frame all around her. It is a bit too short at the bottom, and we will create another shape where she or the table can be standing on. As far as that frame goes, I want to say that I have studied many of Mucha's frames, and I came up with a simple go-to frame. If I start an Art Nouveau painting, I know how to start. I know which shapes I want to be there, and then I can go in and vary those. I therefore encourage you to take a look at all of his paintings, or some of them, and find your frame, the one that really speaks to you and that you can see yourself editing and introducing a lot of variety to it. That'll make starting so much easier. In the frame, I encourage you to use geometric shapes. There can be symmetry. In fact, I think there should be symmetry. I'd say it's for more advanced painters in this style to go for an asymmetrical frame. We will start with set table for the very important step of adding as many naturalistic details as we can. And seriously, I encourage you to overdo it. Her teacup? That's a leaf. The table grew out of the floor. Her dress, the flowiest dress you've ever seen. Her hair, wavy and blown away by some invisible slow motion breeze. I overdid it on purpose and then went back in and reduced some of these details that were just over the top, especially in the frame. I noticed that the natural elements were overwhelming and you couldn't even see her chair, which is why I went back in. I reduced those to a bit simpler, but rather flat shapes. There we have it. It's a woman doing a mundane task with excessive decor around her. When you work digitally, you can make absolutely sure that everything is symmetrical by simply copying it and then mirroring it. And then when you are more advanced, you can try to do that by hand as well. I hope this provides a good starting point for you to have that knowledge of how to composition something and that knowledge on how to alter something. And one more bonus practice I also teased a bit is go study the masters. Find the geometry as well as all of the different details they put time in to make naturalistic, even though they usually aren't. This is simple when you have a tablet and you can paint over the existing painting with your notes, but the Mucha frames I studied by hand. You can do that as well. Before I share my resources, I promised you at the beginning of this video, I have a quick question for you. Did you learn anything new in this video? If so, please be sure to subscribe or leave a comment, or even if you have a friend who loves Art Nouveau and you know would appreciate this video, maybe share it with them. Anything to signal YouTube that you found value in this video would be highly appreciated. I promised to share my resources and here they are. The first one is archive.org. It's a free library. Without a free account, you can download and look at all of the things that are out of copyright. And with a free account or a login with your Google, you can borrow those things for short periods of time. And it's an incredible resource. I'd recommend you go and type in Art Nouveau. Just make sure you spell it correctly because it is a spelling bee worthy word, and see what pops up. Archive.org for me is a throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks kind of resource. There are books in here I've never even heard of, artists I can discover, and every now and then there will be an absolute treasure. Second, Google Arts and Culture. They have a really good systemized catalog and you can filter by style, by time, even historic events. It is really well organized and you can go on a hyperlink adventure. Just look for your favorite painting and then see where it takes you. Third resource is WIKIART, an encyclopedia for art. Now they don't have a great filter system. It's run by volunteers and it is an encyclopedia. You should know what you're looking for before you go onto this page. But if they have the artist you're looking for, in my experience, they have way more paintings of that artist than Google Arts and Culture. Anything you want to know on top of this, make sure to tell me. I read every single comment. I love hearing your feedback. Do you want me to give you a colored version of my sketch? Do you want to do another exercise together or analyze a master's works together? Just leave a comment down below. Final thing, and then I promise I'll let you go. Here is a list of my favorite arts and crafts people from the Art Nouveau movement to give you some inspiration. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!